on that. Joining us now is the play-by-play voice of the Utes, Bill Riley, on the Deseret First Credit Union Hotline. Bill, welcome back to BYU Sports Nation. It's been too long.
I know. It's been a couple of years, fellas. What's going on?
Well, we're just trying to figure out how one would call 5 turnovers in like 9 minutes and not be like, I'm not sure what's happening.
Yeah, that was a lot. I wasn't there for the game.
Oh, that's
I had
right.
To choose.
You did the Duke game.
I was at Madison Square Garden because 2 weeks beforehand it didn't look like the Utes were going to be in the Vegas Bowl. So we made plans and had everything set and ready to go, and I was calling Utah and Duke at Madison Square Garden. So, but I was following it, and I saw the turnovers, and it pretty much followed the script of a lot of recent Utah-BYU games, and for whatever reason, the Cougars have struggled to protect the football.
Now BYU has changed the offense. It's much more conservative. It seems like it will be less turnover-prone. What were your takeaways from the BYU-Arizona game in that regard?
I thought that it was a really good basic game plan. I thought they were clean. I was talking to somebody yesterday. I think the best word to describe both offensively and defensively last week was just a clean game plan. I don't think Detmer on offense, from what I was seeing, did anything overly complicated. Played to his strengths, kept things pretty simple, and I thought they executed it pretty well. And, you know, in a first game out, especially for a guy that hasn't played in a long time at quarterback and Hill and your running back and first-time coordinator, I thought it was a really good, sound game plan for BYU last week.
What matchups stick out to you? I know you heard us talking a little bit about the defensive lines on both sides of the ball and how teams will be able to establish the run, but what are you looking for on Saturday's game that will determine the outcome?
I think you guys hit it on the head with a big one. I think BYU has to try to be able to run the football, which is it's a tough task. Utah's front 7, really their front 4 or 5, are really, really good, physical, and tough. So that to me is going to be matchup number 1. And, you know, because again, do you want to get into a game with a quarterback that hasn't thrown the ball a ton in a while and have him say, okay, you got to throw the ball over. You're going to have to throw the ball 35, 40 times. I think you'd like to have some real balance. And I really think the strength is Williams running the football and then setting up maybe some play action and being able to let Taysom throw the ball from there. If they can't do that, it might be a long day. On the other side for Utah, I think they kind of want to do some of the same thing. They didn't run real well against Southern Utah. Southern Utah was pretty stout up front, and the offensive line's caught a lot of grief over the last week since that game. So I think there's a little chip on their shoulder, but I think they would like to establish the run as well.
What kind of difference is Troy Williams? Because now you have a dynamic stretch the field quarterback at the helm, which the guys in the past have managed the game well, and the defense has been good, and the special teams has been really good, and that's how games have been won. It kind of changes things, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, I think it changes it for the good, because I think what you've got now is a guy that can really stretch the field for you. You know, it was pretty apparent. I talked to offensive coordinator Aaron Roderick and asked him about it, and I said, you know, you're going to be conservative? He goes, no, I got a guy who can really throw the football, and so I'm going to throw it. And it was pretty apparent early on. I mean, Troy Williams is a different guy. And no offense to Travis Wilson. Travis was a really good competitor and a winner, but he struggled to throw the football down the field and in some cases made Utah's offense a little predictable. Williams opens that up a little bit. Utah's still pretty unproven with some of their playmakers. Patrick had a good first game, but they're still trying to establish guys like Raylan Singleton and Kyle Fulks. They've got talent, there's no doubt about it, but it's kind of unproven talent right now.
Bill Riley, the voice of the Utah Utes, with us on the Deseret First Credit Union Hotline as part of BYU Sports Nation's Rivalry Week coverage. Does it feel different to you this time around, Bill, with Kalani Sitake now the head coach at BYU? I mean, how can it really be that much different in one offseason?
It's weird. I asked the same question on my radio show yesterday, and people, I think it seems a little more civil. I don't know what it was, but there was not a lot of love between the coaching staffs, and I think that filtered down a little bit to the players and a little bit to the fans. Fans are always going to be fans. There's always going to be a little bit of nastiness and vitriol, but that's okay. That's rivalries are supposed to have a little edginess and nastiness to it. I think sometimes it would go to another level that wasn't really needed. But it feels a little bit different. I mean, this rivalry has felt a little different to me ever since they left the Mountain West. You know, when Utah joined the Pac-12 and BYU went independent, it had a little bit different feel for me, if that makes sense. It's still fun. I love the game, but it's not being played in November either. There's no conference ramifications on the line. You know, Utah's going to have, 9 bigger games when they get into conference play because they're for conference championships. But the rivalry, I think the tenor of it all, because Kalani's such a good dude and he and Kyle are close, and Utah fans have a soft spot for him. It's, he may be the coach of BYU and they may root their butts off against him this week, but people like Kalani Sitake because he spent 10 years in the program and built some pretty good defenses.
Yeah, it's interesting. Blaine Fowler mentioned the psychological advantage that Utah had in maybe years previous of those guys don't respect you. Bronco Mendenhall saying it's just another game, ... He said there's so much respect and mutual respect, like you mentioned, for Kalani Sitake that it almost seems like that element may have been taken away, yet it's the rivalry.
Yeah, I mean, Kalani, this, guys, we know this here, and nationally some people know it. But at the end of the day, this is one of the most unique rivalries, if not the most unique rivalry in college football. It's unbelievable. I mean, when you talk about the different levels of coaches having played in different places and been on different staffs, the religious versus the public component, the history down through the years, the battle, 15 of the last 20 matchups have been a touchdown or less. There's so many levels to this rivalry, but I do think there's a little bit more respect between the programs now. On Saturday, I think that all goes out the window. I think Kalani Sitake may love Kyle Whittingham, but at the end of the day, if he can beat Kyle Whittingham, he's going to do it. And Kyle Whittingham may think of Kalani Sitake as a brother or a son, but if he can add an extra touchdown on the board, I think he'll add an extra touchdown on the board. The game's still going to be the game, but I think that the tenor leading up to the game and around it's a lot better.
What is your favorite part about rivalry week between BYU and Utah? And you've been around it for a long time.
Just the game. I mean, I love the game, whether it's at Rice Eccles, down at Lavelle Edwards. I just love it. There's that patch of blue on Saturday. There'll be that patch of red next year down in Utah County, and just the intensity of the game and the unpredictability of the game. I think that's the other thing, too. I was talking to my counterpart, Greg Rubello, you guys know. This game, who would have predicted 5 straight turnovers in a game last year? I mean, come on. Who would have predicted 4th and 18 being converted? I mean, there's just things that happen in this rivalry that you don't expect, and you get some great games too. I mean, 10 years ago today, or 10 years ago this week, or this season, I should say, is the famous Beck to Harleen game, but that game was back and forth and back and forth. There weren't any turnovers in that game, guys. I mean, that was just a great football game. So I always say expect a good competitive game, but if weird stuff happens, it may very well happen.
It's hard to predict how turnovers will play out because to some degree there's some luck involved there. But if there were no turnovers in this game, how do you see this playing out?
Well, I think BYU needs it to be something like that. I think they can't afford to be on the road in what will be a very hostile atmosphere against a really good football team and turn the ball over. I think if you're a home team in a rivalry game, you might be able to survive a turnover or two, but I think road teams have a harder time doing that and losing that turnover battle. So I think, if Kalani's going to come in and try and spring an upset, I think he's going to need to have a pretty clean game, maybe something similar to what he had a week ago against Arizona. But I think he's going to be facing a better football team than he faced in Arizona. That Arizona team still kind of seems, and I said before the season, I didn't know what to make of them because they overhauled the defense. They were solid, but I still think they're a work in progress. Everybody is at this time of year, but I think they need to have a pretty clean game. I think they need to be able to have some balance too. If Utah, turns off the running game faucet for BYU, and they have to ask Taysom Hill to throw the ball, 35, 40 times, I think that could be a tough day too. I think BYU needs some balance against Utah.
Bill Riley, the voice of the Utes. Follow him at ESPN 700 Bill on the Twitter machine. In his time at Utah, while you were around him, do you have a favorite story, a Kalani Sitake story that we need to know about?
Probably nothing I could say on the air. and now that he's in Provo, it might get him in trouble with the honor code office. No, Kalani's he's just.
He had a beard one time.
Well, yeah, there was some facial hair, but I'm pretty sure he might be able to get the beard card down there, right?
Yeah.
If he wins some football games, certainly. He's just a good guy, and what I like about him is. The one thing I always tell people is he was the guy. You know, when you're the head coach of a program, sometimes you're the CEO, and you can't always be in the trenches with the guys. You're kind of overseeing everything. So he was one of those guys when you'd sit in the cafeteria, everybody loved him. I mean, he would talk to the managers. He would talk to the quarterbacks. He would talk to the defensive backs. Anybody and everybody, you know. He talked to the black kids. He talked to the poly kids. He talked to the white kids. He was that guy that everybody came to because he was so easy to approach and so easy to talk to. And I know he's kind of started that mantra down there of the family atmosphere, which has always been kind of the case up at Utah. They pride themselves on the family thing. But, you know, I think he's kind of creating that same type thing down there, that approachable kind of family feeling.
Bill Riley with us. Great stuff, man. And speaking of beards and beard cards, the headshot that we're showing on BYU Sports Nation on BYUtv right now has you with a pretty good-looking beard. Is that still current, Bill?
Yeah, I've got to get it trimmed back. I don't like to keep it long. I'm not one of those hipster doofuses that like to have the ironic mustache and the hats and things like that. You guys probably don't have a lot of them on campus down there, but they're all over the place in Salt Lake City. I like to keep it close. I'm driving right now, so I don't know. I don't have my BYU Sports Nation. I've got a DVR, so I'll watch it when I get home a little later today.
We know you watch every day, so that's great.
You don't know, but I watch you every day. Ever since Jerem Jordan was an intern way back in the day at KSL, I like to keep tabs on his career. But it's close cropped. It's still there. My daughter tells me that I look better for her entire life until 2 years ago. She never saw me with a beard. And now when she sees me without the beard, she tells me I look terrible. So that's what you'll get, by the way, when you get daughters, guys.
Yeah.
So get used to that.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I keep it around, so it's still here.
Awesome stuff. Say no to the hipster doofus look.
Right. No ironic beards, mustaches, or glasses.
Bill, great to talk to you as always, man, and we'll see you this weekend.
Sounds good, guys. Thanks.
Bill